Foster's team had a record one season of 123 wins and only 6 losses. John McGraw himself quietly hired Foster to show the New York Giant pitching staff what he knew. Christy Mathewson is said to have learned to throw his celebrated fadeaway from Rube Foster.
Excellent mind. Excellent mind. He was born to be baseball. Rube was. And he was actually more or less 2 innings ahead of everybody. That was Rube Foster. Rube gave all of the signals. Rube put on all of the plays, and he had the men that could do just what he wanted them to do.
Abandoned by the federal government, segregated from the rest of society, Black Americans were on their own. They established colleges, started newspapers, formed organizations to stop lynching. And now Rube Foster began to dream of organizing a league of black teams, which would one day compete with the major leagues as equals. W.E.B. Du Bois, editor of The Crisis, the journal of the new National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, recruited boys to sell subscriptions door to door by promising them baseball.
The Tigers are going for their 4th straight win.
Baseball is
Hi, and welcome to MVP Baseball. This is Dwayne Kuiper with Mike Krukow. Should be a great night for a ball game. Welcome to this American League matchup featuring the Boston Red Sox and the Detroit Tigers.
Picture and learning how to play the game. Organize your team.
Now play shortstop.
This batter pounds the ball off right-handed pitchers. First pitch of the game.
Monday, September 21st, 1980.
This guy's a strikeout pitcher, pure and
Here
simple.
is something for the Giant fans to consider. Suppose Fred Tenney should be crippled. That would be a calamity, wouldn't it?
Contact on that
Yes,
one.
it would in one way, but it wouldn't keep the Giants from winning the pennant. There is a young fellow on the bench named Fred Merkel who can fill that job better than 9/10 of the first baseman in the
There's not
league.
a cloud in sight.
He is
What
crying
great
for a
day
chance to
play
win.
baseball.
Chicago Tribune.
Next up, Manny Ramirez.
The final weeks of the 1908 National League season saw a fierce struggle between the Chicago
for a
Cubs
ball.
and their arch rivals, the New York Giants. With the pennant on the line, they met at the Polo Grounds on September 23rd.
And misses.
He strikes
John
out about
McGraw
8 to
had to
9
make a
innings,
last
pretty
minute
impressive
change in the
total.
Giant lineup. First baseman Fred
Misses
Tenney
for a ball
was
with a
injured.
96-mile-an-hour heater.
Substituting for him was an eager 19-year-old rookie named Fred Merkel.
3-1.
In the bottom of the 9th, there were 2 outs and 2 men on for the Giants, with the score tied 1-1.
Jones issues the
Giant
free
pinch
pass.
hitter Moose
He
McCormick
showed a great
was
eye
on
right there. He was
third,
patient,
representing the
pitcher,
winning
and
run.
ended up with a free pass.
Fred Merkel was the
Up
runner
next,
on first.
Miguel Cabrera.
Al Bridwell, the Giant shortstop,
Blazing
was up to bat.
fastball misses. That pitch 96
He
on
lined
the
the
gun.
very first pitch past Cubs second baseman Johnny Evers into center
And there's
field
his
for a
strike.
clean single.
Kuiper throws 3 different
Moose
pitches when he gets on the
McCormick
mound.
lumbered home. The
it
Giants
just
had
stays
won the
there.
game and most likely the pennant.
He reaches on the infield single.
Jubilant Giant fans began pouring onto the field. At that moment, Fred Merkel was on his way to second.
Berkman
Alarmed by the oncoming crowd and convinced the game was over, he turned and ran for the clubhouse.
is in there for a strike.
Johnny
in his
Evers
own
saw
one.
that Merkel hadn't
This guy can
touched
steal a
second.
bag with the rest of them. He
If
could be
Evers
gone.
could get the ball
There's a drive.
and touch second
No one's
himself,
gonna catch that
the
one.
winning run would be
Home
canceled
run.
by the forceout. The Cubs would still have a chance.
There was no doubt about that. You can see that thing was out of here the second it hit the bat.
But first, he had to find the ball. Joe McGinnity, the Giants' third base coach, saw what Evers was up to, won a scramble for the ball, and threw it into the stands. A fan in a brown bowler caught it and started home with his trophy. But two Cubs chased the man through the mob, knocked him down when he resisted, grabbed the ball, and tossed it to Joe Tinker. He relayed it to Evers at second. Evers then jumped up and down on the bag to make sure the umpire saw what he had done.
Soon we saw Frank Chance arguing with Hank O'Day, who was the umpire in charge. But we really didn't find out what it was all about until we got into the clubhouse and somebody told us. Johnny Evers claimed he had gotten the ball and touched second base so that Merkel was out. Al Bridwell.
First with a base hit.
Both teams claimed victory. It took Harry C. Pulliam, the league president, 2 days to disallow the Giant run and declare the game a tie, to be replayed at the end of the season if the two teams were deadlocked.
That guy out there's got one of the best arms in the league.
Trying to explain the Merkel boner in 25 words or less is like trying to explain relativity to kindergartners. It's a force out under the rules of baseball. This had happened in a game umpired by the same umpire 3 weeks earlier, so Evers knew where he stood. Under the rules of baseball, play was not completed so long as there was a force out possible. And with the force out concluded, the run that scored didn't count. It ended up determining who won the pennant that year.
Next at the plate,
It also ended up leaving poor Fred Merkel with this eponym created to embarrass and humiliate him and his ghostly presence even to
He's got a
this day.
four-seamer, an average change, and an average two-seam fastball.
As a result of the Merkel boner, the Cubs and Giants were deadlocked when the regular season ended. And on October 8th, 1908, a one-game playoff was held at the Polo Grounds. Christy Mathewson, having the best year of his career, was to pitch for the Giants.
he gets strike three.
Even New York had never seen anything like it.
The Polo Grounds quit selling tickets by 1 o'clock, and thousands who held tickets couldn't force their way through the street mobs to the entrances. The umpires were an hour getting into the park. By game time, there were thousands on the field in front of the bleachers. The stands were jammed. The elevated lines couldn't run because of people who had climbed up and were sitting on the tracks. Mordecai Brown.
The next batter is Johnny Estrada.
Firemen drove onlookers off the elevated tracks with hoses, but they just climbed back up again. Fans without tickets tried to burn their way into the park and had to be beaten back by mounted policemen. Thousands more covered the rock-faced cliff called Coogan's Bluff that offered views of only part of the field. Never in the history of the game, one reporter wrote, have there been so many to see a game who didn't see it.
Hit towards third base.
From the stands, Three-Finger Brown remembered there was a steady roar of abuse. I never heard anybody or any set of men called as many foul names as the Giant fans called us that day.
He's tallied 13 wins and 5 losses this season.
He squeezes it for the out.
That's a great play on a very tough line drive. That's one of the
The
toughest
Cub
balls in
pitcher,
baseball
Jack
to judge.
Pfister, was rattled. He hit Fred Tenney and walked Buck Hertzog.
This could be a long
Turkey
day.
Mike Donlin doubled, scoring Tenney. The Giants led 1-0. Pfister walked the next batter. It looked as if the Giants were about to get their revenge for Merkel. Then Cub manager Frank Chance sent for Three-Finger Brown. Brown had started or relieved in 11 of the last 14 games of the season. He had received 6 letters threatening him with death if he dared pitch against the Giants.
He was hoping the batter would go fishing at the pitch out of the zone.
And he had to shove his way to the mound through the hostile, muttering crowd that had spilled into the outfield.
That was not an easy catch at all, big boy. Great defense.
But he was ready.
Arthur Devlin was up.
First pitch strike.
Low average hitter, great fielder, tough in the pinches. But I fanned him, and then you should have heard the name that flew around me as I walked to the bench. I was about as good that day as I ever was in my life. Mordecai Brown.
He's on first.
In the third inning, the Cubs, sparked by Joe Tinker's triple, scored 4 runs off Mathewson, despite the ceaseless, angry hissing that greeted every Chicago batter.
Up next, Manny Ramirez.
In the 7th, New Yorkers had reason to hope again as Fred Tenney drove in 1 run. The score was now 4-2 Cubs.
Okay, this dude knows how to steal a bag, and now
And it stayed there through the 8th and the top of the 9th. The tension became too much for the Giants and their fans.
Running catch.
The scene was really the most disgraceful ever put off around here. Once when Kling was chasing a foul from Doyle's bat, 2 beer bottles, a drinking glass, and a derby hat were thrown at him. Is that baseball? Does that do New York any good? Gee whiz, if we can't lose a pennant without dirty work, let's quit altogether. New York Evening Journal.
He's in there with a 2-out
Play was
single.
stopped for a time because of fistfights in the stands. A newspaper reported the next day that 7 men had been carted away, raving mad.
And a fastball in for a strike.
Three-Finger Brown stayed calm. 3 Giants came up in the 9th, and 3 went down.
1 ball and 1 strike.
It was all over. The Cubs had won the pennant and had to run for their lives. Some of our boys got caught by the mob and were beaten up some, Brown remembered. The manager, Frank Chance, was hit in the throat. Jack Pfister was slashed in the shoulder. They just barely made it into the clubhouse and had to be driven to their hotel in a paddy wagon, guarded by 6 armed officers.
Stepping in, Carlos Guillen.
He's pitched 172 innings this season, and batters have had good success against him with an average of 252.
The Giants owner had gold medals struck for his players anyway, reading The Real Champions 1908.
Paints the inside corner, strike 3.
John McGraw never blamed Fred Merkle. It is criminal to say that Merkle is stupid and to blame the loss of the pennant on him, he said.
Slider catches
We were
the
robbed
outside
of
corner.
it, and you can't
He
say
showed
Merkle
excellent
did
command with
that.
that pitch, a strike right on the edge of the zone.
But the public did blame him.
He'll throw the
Merkle
fastball
stuck
when he
it
gets
out
into
for
trouble. I
14
think it's
years
his
in
best pitch.
baseball. But never got over the reputation of being the man
3 pitches,
responsible
3
for the
strikes.
boner play.
3 pitches, 3 strikes, doesn't get
Even
easier.
Al Bridwell, whose single should have won the original game, came to sympathize. I wish I'd never gotten that hit, Bridwell
misses
said.
with a fastball.
I wish I'd struck
You're
out
gonna strike
instead.
that pitcher right here, Kyle.
If I'd
He
done
likes
that,
to challenge
then it
hitters.
would have spared Fred a lot of humiliation.
The count's even at 1.
He showed excellent
The
command of
Cubs'
slider with a strike
5-game
right on
World
the edge of the
Series
zone.
victory over Ty Cobb and the Detroit Tigers came as something of an anticlimax,
Fastball down in the zone.
although the Cubs
Strike.
have never managed to win another since.
I grew up in
Pitch
central
missed
Illinois,
inside.
midway between Chicago and
Sometimes you
St.
try to
Louis,
make a hitter chase your
and I
pitch.
made a
That's exactly what
historic
you saw right
blunder.
here.
All my friends became Cardinal fans and grew up happy and liberal,
Full count here.
and I
He tried to get
became
the
a
hitter
Cub
to chase
fan
one
and
out of the
grew up
zone.
embittered
Now he
and
has to come back.
conservative.
He's got to throw a strike.
Giles sends it out to shallow center. The ball pops out of his glove.
I remember reading a story one time about
reaches with a
Cobb in the
single.
minor leagues playing,
He lined that ball right
and they didn't
past
shower in the
infield.
ballpark.
There was no
They would
doubt
go
it was
back
a
to their
base hit.
little
Good bit of
apartment
hitting.
or house, whatever it was. And every day, Cobb was always in the tub ahead of the roommate. And this one particular day, the roommate went back to the house, and the roommate got into the tub. Cobb came in and dragged him out of the tub and said, from the bottom of his heart, "Don't you understand? I have to be first."
He'll think twice before attempting to steal on
I
this
was
guy
like
again.
a
That
steel
was one
spring
heck of
with
throw
a
right there.
growing and dangerous flaw in it. If it is wound too tight or has the slightest weak point, the spring will fly apart, and then it's done for.
It's in the game.
Ty Cobb got into trouble again in 1909 during a crucial August game between the Tigers and the Philadelphia Athletics. He was accused of deliberately spiking the third baseman, Frank Baker. Even the normally courtly Philadelphia manager Connie Mack called Cobb the dirtiest player in baseball. And Van Johnson himself suggested that if he didn't stop this sort of playing, he will have to quit the game. Cobb ignored it. He went on playing his sort of game, snarling, swearing, shoving, spiking, while hitting .650 in 16 games at home and averaging 1 stolen base every afternoon. But in Cleveland, he stabbed a black hotel night watchman who had dared ask him to identify himself. The Tigers paid the watchman's medical expenses in exchange for the victim's promise not to prosecute.
Fastball up in the zone for a strike.
In the midst of the controversy that followed him everywhere, Cobb led the league in hitting in 1909, and his Tigers took the pennant for the 3rd year in a row. They would play the Pittsburgh Pirates in the World Series, and for the first time, Ty Cobb would have to face his great rival and near opposite in all things, Honus Wagner.
134 innings this season, and batters have done well against him with an average of .297.
For most of the decade, Wagner had played quietly and efficiently, winning 7 National League batting titles, staying out of the limelight.
They're making some great decisions on the bases.
Even members of opposing teams came out just to watch him take batting practice. Now, in the opening game of the 1909 World Series, the 2 greatest players in baseball were about to meet. The nation waited to see who would come out on top.
They met today for the first time, these Cobb and Wagner. It was an interesting study in contrast. On the one hand was the Georgia boy, lithe and trim as a greyhound, his build speaking the athlete in every line. And on the other, the enormous, heavy-bodied German, a picture of strength and stability, without, however, any apparent suggestion of quickness or movement. The Detroit News.
Pleasantries ended when the series began. Once, when Cobb got to first, ready to steal, he shouted, "Watch out, Krauthead, I'm coming down. I'll cut you to pieces." "Come ahead," said Wagner, and when Cobb did come, Wagner tagged him hard in the mouth, splitting his lip. The series took the full 7 games. When it was all over, Pittsburgh had beaten the Tigers, and Honus Wagner had completely outplayed Ty Cobb. Wagner hit .333, Cobb just .231. Cobb had managed to steal 2 bases. Honus Wagner had stolen 6, including home.
And on 3 pitches, he's gone. After 3 innings, the score is 3-0.
It is important to remember in an imperfect and fretful world that we have an institution which is practically above reproach and above criticism.
Just off the plate.
Nobody worth mentioning wants to change its constitution or limit its powers. The government is not asked to inspect it, regulate, suppress, guarantee, or own it. There is no movement afoot that we know of to uplift it like the stage, or to abolish it like marriage. No one complains that it is vulgar like the newspapers, or that it assassinates genius like the magazines. It rouses no class passions, and while it has magnates, they go unhung with our approval. This once comparatively perfect flower of our sadly defective civilization is, of course, baseball. The only important institution, so far as we remember, which the United States regards with a practically universal approval. Saturday Evening Post.
The next batter is Manny Ramirez. This batter's been known to go on streaks versus right-handed pitching.
Who discovered the land of the brave and the free? I don't know. I don't know.
He jacked that one way back and
comes off the bat, everybody knew it was out of the yard. That was a shot.
He's the one who discovered the fadeaway ball, and he pitches for Muggsy McGraw.
The Tigers have some activity down in their pen. The bullpen isn't quite ready, so the manager's at the mound to give them some more time. He's done for the day. Sedano comes in from the bullpen. Stepping in, 1 for 2, Miguel Cabrera.
I'm glad I discovered this land. Gee, it's a wonderful game.
Taken for a ball.
Sometimes you try to make the hitter chase your pitch. That's exactly what you saw right there.
Pitchers ahead, 1 and 2.
Great pitch in the black. Would have been a call strike even if the batter didn't swing through.
Maybe so. I don't know.
He goes out to right.
Sheets don't print Mr. Bonaparte's face.
The catch is
No
made.
stories about him today.
Stepping in, Lance
he
Berkman.
never could hold down that old second base like his namesake Big Nap lay away. Baseball, baseball, ain't it a dandy old game?
Takes a tailing fastball.
Sometimes you try to make the hitter chase your pitch. That's exactly what you saw right there.
There's a strike, 1 and 2.
Batter could not lay out the corner strike. Nice fastball there.
And paid his 5 francs to see Tyrus Top slug. He'd have said,
He
I
checks
give
his
up,
swing.
I'm a bug.
That was a
I'm
close
a
one there
bug.
for you, but I'd have to say that he
Gee,
wins.
it's a wonderful game.
And now it's a full count.
Sometimes you try to make the hitter chase your pitch. That's exactly what you saw right there.
Slider got him on the outside corner.
He gets ahead of him and never looks back. Sweet strikeout.
If down in his pocket Napoleon had dug and paid his 5 francs to see Tyrus Top slug, he'd have said, I give up, I'm a bug, I'm a bug.
Pitch just off the
It's
plate,
a
1-0.
wonderful game.
2 balls and no strikes.
Baseball is thought of as this game of geometry, the game of geometry. It's perfect. It's 90 feet, it's 60 feet, it's this, it's that. Everything's perfect.
Lifts
Right
one
angles,
to left.
everything's all that. And
He
then
makes the
it has
play.
the strictest
He didn't get all
rules,
that ball. The
and
fielder
it has
stole
the
over, got under it,
strictest
made an easy
history,
play.
everything interpreted. And kids play it
Next
all
up,
over the
Johnny
place
Estrada.
with 2 bases, 1
This guy hits
base,
both ways,
with
but
the
he's much more
car
polished
parked
on
in the
right
middle of
side.
where they're playing. They play it in the street. We played it in
Pitch
the hollow,
taken
use
for a
trees
ball.
for bases. We call it the hollow, where I lived in Lexington, Virginia. We had a wonderful baseball. You can improvise baseball in the living room.
Out of the
You can
zone, that's a
improvise
ball.
baseball on a New York street, and people do it every day. You can play it in the
And the
pasture.
pitch.
You can play it on the side of a hill. You can play baseball anywhere.
That one's headed for the stands, and it's out of here.
Between 1910 and 1920, Albert Einstein published his theory of relativity. The first ships moved through the Panama Canal, and 22 million people died of influenza.
He got it. Great catch in the gap. Score one that half inning.
The war to end all wars was fought. The Bolsheviks seized power in Russia, and immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe streamed into the United States, more than 1 million of them a year. Harriet Tubman and Julia Ward Howe and Albert Goodwill Spaulding died. Orson Welles and Joe DiMaggio and Jackie Robinson were born.
Gathers it in with his glove, out number one.
Americans turned out to watch the Racine Malted Milks and Rockford Dries and Milwaukee Brewers. The Jackson Convicts, Quincy Crybabies, Zanesville Flood Sufferers, and the Telluride, Colorado Baseball Club, champions of the Western Slope, whose home field was 8,745 feet above sea level.
1-2 the count. Outstanding fastball in the corner of the strike zone.
Thousands of small-town players dreamed of moving on to still greater fame. I didn't expect to make it to the big leagues, said Cincinnati outfielder Ed Roush, but I didn't care. I had to get away from those damn cows.
Stepping in 1 for 2.
Baseball transformed the language. A success was now a home run. Crazy ideas came out of left field, and inappropriate behavior was off base.
1-1 the count.
Bleacher seats now cost a quarter. Box seats went for $1. A hot dog cost a nickel.
Retired, the home team coming up next. After
the game was still fast and furious. Speed and strategy took precedence over power. Ty Cobb and John McGraw still set the pace.
That's a liner to right field.
When the decade began, baseball had never been more popular. By its end, fans everywhere would feel betrayed as some of the finest players in the game sought to sell out the national pastime.
Hits a foul ball.
There had been many scandals and incidents because wherever there was any kind of sporting event, there were gamblers. And basically, gamblers want an edge. And that edge often is having paid one or the other players, or having gotten the opposing pitcher drunk the night before or that morning, or distracting them by shooting bullets at the left fielder when the ball would come in the air. And, you know, the early games didn't have a fence that you could hit it over. You got a home run by hitting it, and it would roll and roll and roll. So there was less separation between the fans and the game. And if you hit a line drive that was 2 inches foul, you hit a spectator, because they were going to sell not only all the seats, but all the room up to the sidelines. And in fact, in a couple of the World Series games in 1919, they put a rope across left field, and they put people standing there. And there was a ground rule triple. If the ball went into that group of people, you would get a triple. And so, of course, if it was your guy and he hit a foul ball, you would surge forward and try to have the ball. And if it was the other guy, you'd try to back up against the wall and pull the rope back so your guy had a chance to catch it. What this led to, of course, is that there was much more familiarity. Even while you were playing, there were guys yelling out, you know, $15 if you drop that ball, you know, and the guy might listen to you. If the other guy said 20, if you catch it, you know, he might catch it at the last minute. And that thing that kind of existed in hometown baseball certainly was not strange to the major leagues, because it was so hometown at the beginning. It still was a very, very personal, we know our boys personally kind of game.
If you look at pictures of, say, the 1915 Pirates, you're going to see a very different kind of face than you see today. Hard men. Baseball at that point was a way out of the mines. This was a way for immigrant Americans to make it good. Tough men. Hungry young men coming after the established order. Baseball was played with a ferocity of kind of life and death, which in a sense it was for these players. So it represented the rise of American striving in a certain way.
Here's the pitch. A 3-pitch strikeout.
That's the way it is in baseball.
After 5.5, the Red Sox lead by 4.
There's always someone sitting on the bench just itching to get in there in your place. Thinks he can do better. Wants your job in the worst way.
He goes with the pitch.
Back to the coal mines for you, pal.
And he's out.
The pressure never lets up.
The next batter
It doesn't
is
matter
Nick
what you
Johnson.
did yesterday. That's history. It's tomorrow that counts. So you worry all the time. It never ends. Lord, baseball's a worrying thing.
What a shot!
Stanley Kovalevsky.
Tremendous over-the-shoulder grab.
Good hustle to get that ball. Did a better job than real doing his glove at the out.
1-0 count. It's hit out to
The game of baseball is a clean, straight game. And it summons to its presence everybody who enjoys clean, straight athletics. William Howard Taft.
is next.
In 1910, William Howard Taft became the first president ever to attend opening day. And he saw a novel sight, a victory by the Washington Senators over the Philadelphia Athletics. It was an aberration. The mighty Athletics went on to take the pennant and the series that year. They would win the pennant 3 more times in the next 4 years and take 2 more World Series.
The Tigers trail by 4.
They were a remarkable team, sparked by the fine clutch pitching of Albert Bender, who was a Chippewa Indian and therefore known as Chief.
Out of the zone, that's a ball.
And the so-called $100,000 infield of Stuffy McGinnis, Eddie Collins, Blackjack Barry, and Frank Baker,
He's hitting .325,
who led the league
with 17
with 12
long balls
home
and
runs.
73 RBIs.
But it was their manager who deserved most of the credit.
Hitters count 3-1.
I will not tolerate profanity, obscene language, or personal insults from my bench.
Nothing positive comes out of this
I will
guy.
always insist, as long as I am manager of the club, that my
Next up
boys
with
be
a pair of
gentlemen.
runs batted in, Lance
There is room
Berkman.
for gentlemen in any profession. Connie Mack.
The delivery.
The real name of the man who built the Athletics was Cornelius Alexander
Right now, the defense should be
McGillicuddy.
thinking, too, the pitcher can really help out by throwing something low in the strike zone.
Born in 1862 to Irish immigrants, he began as a catcher. Known for his ability to simulate with his fingers the sound of a ball just touching the bat that fooled the umpire into believing he had caught a foul tip. He spent 11 years in the majors, managed to play every position except third base and pitcher, and vigorously supported John Montgomery Ward and his ill-fated Players League.
And there's a swing and a miss.
In 1901, he became part owner of the Philadelphia Athletics and immediately made himself manager, a post he held for 50 years.
Shortstop.
Connie Mack became baseball's
as we
most
go to the bottom of the
conspicuous
inning.
gentleman, managing in coat and
partners,
tie,
time now
demanding
for
that
the
his players
seventh
be
inning
on their
stretch.
best
Didn't you
behavior.
sing recently at Wrigley Field? Oh, I sure did. When I was in the
He
league,
could
I
be
could
as
pitch in front
tough
of
as
50,000
rawhide and
people,
as
but
gentle as a
that was
mother.
like throwing in my backyard. Singing to
Reasonable
take me
and
out to the ball
obstinate
game at
beyond
Wrigley.
reason.
I was scared
And courtly
to
and
death.
benevolent and fierce.
It's time for the 3, 4, and 5 guys.
He was kind-hearted and hard-fisted, drove a close bargain, and was suckered in 100 deals.
Barnes gets ahead 1 ball and no strikes.
He was generous and thoughtful, and autocratic and shy, and independent, and altogether completely
Hit
lovable.
towards the shortstop.
Red Smith, New York Herald.
He reaches with a leadoff single.
Beth, I've seen this guy make these
Connie
kinds of
Mack,
plays
in the
before.
words
This
of Wilfred
time, though,
Sheed,
a little short.
like a tree from the Garden of Eden, came into baseball in the 1880s.
Next up, Carlos.
He began as a not very good player. Like so many other not very good players, he took instead his passion for the game and his brains, and became a mogul. A great manager who would build terrific teams great manager and owner. And then as soon as they had reached their pinnacle, he would sell the players for as much money as he could possibly get.
It is more profitable for me to have a team that is in contention for most of the season, but finishes about fourth. A team like that will draw well enough for the first part of the season to show a profit for the year. And you don't have to give the players raises when they don't win.
Baseball was Mac's livelihood, but it was also his life, and he was worried about the game's integrity. Violent players like Detroit's Ty Cobb distressed him. When the Tigers came to town, Connie Mack advised his team to never get Mr. Cobb angry.
All this guy's got to do is hit the ball marginally deep.
They may not have liked him, but they admired him. Cobb had that terrific fire, that terrific drive. I never saw a fellow with the drive Cobb had. It was his game. It was his base. Everything was his.
Sometimes you try to make
he
it
just,
That's exactly what you
he
saw.
dominated the game. I never saw a fellow like that.
Change misses downstairs. Last season, he batted .323 with no long balls.
In 1910, Ty Cobb was locked in a fierce battle with Napoleon Lajoie of the Cleveland Indians for the batting championship of the American League. The hugely popular Lajoie had led the league in batting twice before and was considered the greatest second baseman in the game. The Chalmers Motor Company had offered a new car to the man who won the title. Cobb wanted that car, but he was so detested by those who played against him that when he and Lajoie were neck and neck for the title at the very end of the season, the manager of the St. Louis Browns, just to spite Cobb, ordered his third baseman to play so deep that Lajoie got 6 bunt singles in a row. The manager was found out and fired. Cobb ended up winning the title by a single percentage point. Years later, it was discovered that, in fact, Lajoie should have won. Cobb's average had been inflated by counting one game twice. But both men got cars.
He let the ball fall.
It would be the first of 10 cars Cobb would receive over his career. He was now widely hailed as the best player in the game. He was one of the best paid, making $9,500 a year. He was careful with his money and had already begun to invest in the small Georgia soft drink company, Coca-Cola, that would soon help make him baseball's richest player.
In the 7th.
But no degree of success could exercise his demons.
Cobb is the great black mark on the history of baseball. There's no question that he was a great player, but he was a man of vile temperament and vile habit. Terribly racist, brutal,
Sometimes you try to make a hitter chase your pitch. That's exactly what you saw right there.
A career that was filled with him. He went into the stands and brutally beat up a handicapped fan who was heckling him.
On May 15th, 1912, at Hilltop Park in Manhattan, Ty Cobb endured the taunts of a New York fan, Claude Luker, until after the 3rd inning, when Luker shouted that Cobb was a half-nigger. Cobb vaulted the railing, knocked down the heckler, and began stomping him with his spike. When the crowd shouted that the man was helpless because he had no hands, Cobb replied, "I don't care if he doesn't have any feet," and kept kicking him until a park policeman pulled him away. Van Johnson, president of the American League, suspended Cobb from organized baseball indefinitely.
Everybody took it as a joke. I was only kidding that fella and I frightened him to death. But I would not take from the United States Army what that man said to me. And the fans in New York cheered me to the echo when I left the field. I don't look for applause, but for the first time in my life, I was glad that the fans were with me.
Although his teammates despised Cobb, they thought he'd been justified. Being called a half-nigger was considered an insult too great for any white man to bear. He refused to play until he was reinstated. It was the first players' strike in Major League history. The Tiger manager desperately rounded up a team of amateurs for the next day's game against Philadelphia. A seminary student pitched for Detroit that afternoon, and the new Tigers lost 24-2. The next game was canceled. Van Johnson now warned that he would suspend every Tiger from the game unless they all agreed to return to the field. Cobb urged his teammates to give in, and when they did, they were each fined $100. After Cobb paid only a $50 fine for the savage beating, Johnson lifted his suspension.
The more his fires burned, the more that provoked him on the field. I suppose one could say that the happy byproduct was the extraordinary baseball that he gave the fans of the time. But
he delivers.
There's a moment we could say it's not worth it.
The tying run is in the on-deck circle.
His totality was an embarrassment to baseball.
Swing and a miss.
Better had no choice right there. Take it, and it's a strike. What a sweet pitch.
On November 13, 1911, John Jordan O'Neill, who would one day become one of baseball's greatest ambassadors, was born in the Gulf Coast port town of Carabel, Florida, the grandson of a slave.
Every town had a baseball team. In my town, Carabel, that's where I was born.
And he's
they had a
out at
little
first base.
local baseball team, and my father played on the baseball team.
Next at the plate,
Would take me out with him to the baseball fields, wherever they would play, and I loved it. And I could catch the ball, so the older fellas would like to throw the ball to me, but I was kind of a little show. Here's a little boy catching the ball, and people kind of like this. So that started me in wanting to play baseball.
After 8, the score is 5-3.
For years, Andrew Rube Foster and other black stars had organized dozens of barnstorming teams in the hope that they might one day play in the major leagues. But in 1911, the gentleman's agreement among the owners still kept all black players, no matter how good, out of organized white baseball. Nevertheless, that same year, the Cincinnati Reds signed two light-skinned players from Cuba, Armando Marsans and Rafael Almeida. When questions arose about their playing a white man's game, the Cincinnati management assured the public they were as pure white as Castile soap.
3 balls, 1 strike.
Now that the first shock is over, it would not be surprising to see a Cuban a few shades darker breaking into the professional ranks. It would then be easier for colored players who are citizens of this country to get into fast company. New York Age.
But black Americans were still barred.
1 on and no one out.
It was only 4 high schools in the state of Florida a black kid could attend. So just elementary education. Well, this was by design because they were thinking, well, this is all that a black kid needed. So I got to go to the Sarah field. So I wasn't in the Sarah field. And in that Sarah field, I was a box boy. I'm sitting behind the boxes. One day, and it was hot in Florida, and I was sweaty, and that muck was, I'm itching, and my father was a foreman on this job, and he was on this side of the boxes, all the old men, I was on the other side of my boxes, and I said, damn, there's got to be something better than this. I'm saying it aloud, see. So when we get off the truck that night, my daddy said,
the ball is hit to center.
I heard what you said behind the boxes.
Sanchez
and
makes the grab for the out.
Was saying damn. See, because he's never heard me say damn. And I doubt if I had ever said damn, really, to tell you the truth. And I heard he said, well, yeah, there's something better. I said, but you know you can't get it here. So you'd have to, you're going to have to go someplace else.
I think that mound
that was one of the reasons I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to get out of that field. And I did. Baseball got me out of that.
Ground ball to the left side. They get the force out at third. That's a fielder's choice.
For years and years and years, baseball was the one where you could say, you know, nobody plays shortstop like this guy. Nobody has a batting stance like this guy. I think originally there was a very local kind of feel to it. Certainly in the teens and 20s and 30s, it was your hometown team. You knew those guys. They, you know, in the 20s, they were still living in boarding houses and sometimes putting their uniform on there and walking or riding to the stadium.
Back in 1909, a rookie outfielder named Harry Hooper reported for spring training with the Red Sox. He was a college man, began to keep a diary of the often dreary life on the road.
Thursday, March 25th. Played the bench. Came near getting into the game when Tris Speaker got hit sliding home, but he stayed in the game. Harry Walter and myself take in moving pictures in the evening.
Pickoff throw.
Friday, April 16th. Walk to the top of Washington Monument with Nickerson.
Taken for a ball.
Play left field in the afternoon. Get 2 hits in 4 and 1 stolen base. 3 putouts and an assist to the plate. Monday, April 19th. President Taft sees game.
To the right side.
Monday, April 26th. Doc Powers, who took second to finish the opening game, died today.
I've seen this guy make these kinds of
We
plays.
sent $25 for a wreath. Monday, May 10th. Rained all day. Sat around in the hotel. We were all invited to the burlesque at the Empire. It's a good show for its kind. Monday, June 28th. Beat Washington. Get a hit off Walter Johnson, which scores the winning run. Harry Hooper.
Third out, we go to the bottom of the inning. After 8 1/2, the score is 6-3.
The plain fact, the New York Times wrote, is that the art and mystery of professional baseball have never taken so strong a hold on so large a public as they are now taking. Though Ty Cobb and the Washington Senators star pitcher Walter Johnson were the decade's greatest players, Harry Hooper and a host of other stars vied for an adoring public's attention.
Barnes watches the ball inside.
Tris Speaker was Harry Hooper's teammate, the Boston Red Sox regal center fielder.
He's hitting back to the dugout. Strike
A former rodeo cowboy whose fans called him the Gray Eagle, he transformed outfield play. He played so shallow that he often recorded unassisted double plays at second base. He threw out a record 35 American League base runners in a single season twice. During a slump in 1910, he was asked by his manager to give up his cherished third spot in the batting order. Like hell I will, he said, and ended the season the Red Sox best hitter. Eddie Collins first played in Connie Mack's celebrated $100,000 infield, but was sent to the Chicago White Sox when Mack sold off his championship team. Collins hit over .340 for 10 seasons and played second base with such cheerful confidence in his own skills that opponents and teammates alike called him Cocky Collins.
Closes it out for the save. The final score, the Red Sox 6, Detroit
First baseman
3.
Hal Chase, Prince Hal, was charming and skilled enough to have become one of baseball's most popular stars. But he was also so unabashed about consorting with gamblers that 3 different managers accused him of throwing games. And fans took to chanting, "What's the odds?" whenever he took the field.
Chase was a great fielding and decent hitting first baseman for the New York team in the American League. He was a gambler and he ran with the gambling crowd. And he lived very well on the winnings that he got from making errors when he needed to make errors. He was a scary figure. Scary because he was tolerated. Scary because of what he did. Scary, too, because in 1916, as Christy Mathewson, the great Christian gentleman, is completing his career with the Cincinnati Reds, Chase is on that team, and Chase's open vituperative scorn for somebody who lived so well and so purely was beyond ugliness.
One of baseball's most beloved stars was Cleveland pitcher Addie Joss. He was nicknamed the human hairpin because of his height and the exaggerated motion with which he hurled the ball. He had won 20 or more games 4 seasons in a row and was a favorite with fans and players alike. Even opposing players enjoyed hearing him harmonize with Ed Walsh of the Chicago White Sox. But Joss had a terrible secret. He was suffering from meningitis. He struggled through the